society in a fictitious state. The great artist is thus a solitary figure. He has, as Frost said, a love with the world. In pursuing his perceptions of reality, he must often sail against the currents of his time. This is not a popular role. If Robert was much honored during his lifetime, it was because a good man preferred to ignore his darker truths.
I had a lover's quarrel with the world. That's me. I thought of modifying that to say I had my lover's quarrels, plural, with the world, but I make one sustained quarrel all my life.
Really the last 4 or 5 years. And I was impressed by a good many qualities, but also by his toughness. He was not particularly belligerent in his relations, his human relations, but he felt it very strongly that the United States should be a country of power, use that power and force wisely. But he once said to me not to let the Harvard in me get to be too important. So we've followed that advice.
You never know what I'll do next. It's time I stopped, you know. This time should I be quieted down? This public life I've got into is more or less an accident. I never said it. I got 50 on it once first, you know, and I got called out into it, and I needed the living, and I'm doing it, but I conquered it, sort of. But there are reserves, things I don't wear on my sleeve. Well, very nice to be back with you. I feel as if I had a new president.
Acknowledging the introduction of his host, the new president of Sarah Lawrence College, Mr. Frost is reminded of his old friend and contemporary, Vachel Lindsay.
I was as happy about Vachel as we jealous poets, artists can be, you know. He was one I could be happy about. Some I'm afraid I'm too jealous of, but I really don't like him, you know. I strive to get over dislike and all that, but it doesn't come out very well. And I'm always glad when one I don't like very honestly, that I've been tried to like, when he gets mad at me so I don't have to read him anymore. And have to strive with him. It's a funny world. But Vachel was one of these very disarming people, very good boy, and one of the real kind of genius, call it, you could say there was a little range about him. He was a little touched, you know, but you could call it divinely touched, you know. He had something very fine about him, lofty, and did some very crazy things. He knew how to do them without trying. He didn't, some of these poets seem to me to get in the corner, you know, gnaw their fingernails and try to get a dark corner, you know, and try to go crazy so they'd qualify. And that in Vachel, he was crazy in his own right. Some of the strangest things. I ought to tell you what you're seeing here on this sideshow. This is a documentary film going on, and they've been in 2 or 3 of them for government purpose, and they've all been about me with a hoe digging potatoes or walking in the woods reciting my own poems, which I don't farm very good many years. I have a little garden, but it's a false picture that represents me as always digging potatoes or saying my own points in the woods. You know, this time we're going to have it right. We're going to have an occasion like this where I'm with my crowd. Going to have the crowd in it. And some other things. They were with me today on shipboard, on the Essex, the old carrier, you know. And I was with the commander, and the old subject came up with peace and wars. That's that category. And I had to have another think at it. And that always means another say to it. And I said to him, peace is something that you only get by war or the threat of war, however tacit the threat. And he nodded grimly. And that's something that we all want the peace, and we are thinking about it. Anything like that bothers me all the time, something comes up and I say a new one to it. It appeases me for the moment. That I'd had a fresh think, the occasion had given me a fresh think. And there's usually an occasion, I don't know, meeting somebody or reading something in the paper, or hearing something about the world. It's all just this one thing, a think. And the excitement you get out of having a think that you want to pass to other people. And sometimes, as I say, when it's too much for me and I can't say anything to it, I say, me for the woods. That's one of my oldest sayings. It doesn't matter what it is, family troubles, any kind, I say, me for the woods. This is a regular spring thing to get here and see what's lived through the winter. It took a long time to be a Vermonter. I came here in 20. See how many years ago that is. And for years I wasn't called a Vermonter. They had meetings and things about poetry, but they considered me an outsider. Then this last year, they made me poet of Vermont.
Oh, the little town of Ripton, up near the mountaintop, where city folks come and go and for a short time stop to view the mountain scenery and breathe the mountain air and wonder at us simple folks who get our living there. It is Robert Frost, the poet, put Ripton on the map, while others we are proud to know he is our leading champ. For others our esteem may grow, none shall go above him, for he loves man and nature so, that is why we love him.
Do you like his poetry?
Yes, I like it very well. And I think he's one of the most famous in Vermont.
I think perhaps with Sandbeck, he's one of the truly great American poets that we have, at any rate in my opinion. Perhaps Mr. Kennedy.
What is your favorite Frost poem?
I think I like Birches.
Birches.
Which of Robert Frost's poems is your favorite?
Who?
Robert Frost?
Funny world, isn't it? Where you came from is very great importance, you know, your family ways. I was brought up and started life in San Francisco. My father was chairman of the Democratic City Committee when Cleveland was elected. I never went to school till I was about 12 years old, and I wasn't very well, and I went downtown with my father all the time, had all my noon meals in the big headquarters of the Democratic Party saloon, Abe Levy's saloon, and I was sort of political kid round. I came east My mother would leave us at Omaha and at Chicago to recheck my father's coffin. Me and my sister. I was 12 years old. And I carried other people around that couldn't stand up, and they were so grieved. So I guess that's the hard part of life. And I did everything I had to do to get by, money, a little bit, you know, working at this and that. I worked on newspapers a little. It didn't do very well. I wasn't a very good reporter. I was too shy. I gravitated to the editorial page. And we had a farm where I could partly earn a living. Didn't do it very well. And I never was away from the farm an evening. More than 3 years, I think it was. Probably it was. I think once I came home as late as 8 o'clock. We never went to church. We never went to movies, never went to anything. And there was nothing we were missing. We were having a very nice time. Nice little farm. And children. They had orchards and fruit and horse and cow and all that. I only left it, drifted away from it, for part-time teaching because I wasn't quite earning a living. And I think it came natural to do it. My mother was a teacher, and I drifted into it for bread and butter and began teaching a little district school and things. District school, 12 children, I remember I had one, and coming and going barefooted, come and go into my knee, you know. I never got called a poet till I was 40 or so, and I always thought it was a praise word that I couldn't use on myself. It's a praise word. You can write poetry, and I wrote it. I don't know how I did it and what would have happened if it hadn't come through somewhere in the end. My complete works are with me here. 2 books, a little new book and a little old book. And they're about, I think it adds up to about maybe 700 pages in 70 years, 10 pages a year. Not many, but still added always about the same a year. I don't calculate on it, but it turns out to be about that much a year. Probably twice that and half thrown away. And people ask what poem you like best. The poem I like best is the one somebody's just praised or the one I've just written. Or else I say you can't tell, you don't like to tell about your poems any more than the mother does about her children. When she has 5 or 6 children, she wouldn't tell you which is her favorite. She might have one. Maybe she shouldn't. She knows she shouldn't. I said to an audience the other day, how many of you don't know, stopping by Woods, there was only one person in 2,000 or 3,000 people raised his hand shamelessly. and then a lady had just asked me to say it. So I said, what in the world do you want me to say it for when you all know it better than I do? You know, but I said it. Just out of lenience. Well, now I'm going to read to you. Now I out walking the world desert, and my shoe and my stocking do me no hurt. See, I've got to keep that little rhyming way all the way through it. See, hurt, desert, stocking, walking, somewhere in there. Now I out walking the world desert, and my shoe and my stocking do me no hurt. I leave behind good friends in town. Let them get well wined and go lie down. Don't think I leave for the outer dark like Adam and Eve put out of the park. Forget the myth. There's no one I am put out with or put out by. Unless I'm wrong, I but obey the urge of a song. I'm bound away, you know that song. And I may return if dissatisfied with what I learned from having died. You didn't know it was going to be a death poem. But you see, what I want you to like is a double thing, isn't it? I like the little tight form and everything. Then I'm going to say to you, not as significant a poem as that. The last one I wrote, I sent it right in, fresh like that, without a title. I couldn't think of what to call it. See, in winter, in the woods, alone, against the trees I go. I mark a maple for my own and lay the maple low. At 4 o'clock I shoulder axe, and in the afterglow I link a line of shadowy tracks across the tinted snow. For winter, for nature I see no defeat in one tree's overthrow, or for myself in my retreat for yet another blow. That was the threat. I was going to write another book. I didn't think of that when I wrote it, but I saw that afterwards, the same as the critics do. They always see meanings I didn't see when I wrote the book. But I put that in. Shall I say that twice to you? Because I like to have written it. It feels so fresh to me. No. In winter, in the woods, alone, against the trees I go. I mark a maple for my own and lay the maple low. At 4 o'clock I shoulder axe, and in the afterglow I link a line of shadowy tracks across the tinted snow. I see for nature no defeat in one tree's overthrow, or for myself in my retreat for yet another blow. I've brought with me tonight, or Mrs. Morrison has brought with me, 20, 30 copies of it to give. She's going to give you each one. Carry away in my handwriting. I wrote it this morning. I never know where I'll write or what I'll write. I remember once in Wilkesboro, where I never was but once in my life, Wilkesboro, Pennsylvania, stuck there, changing trains something. I had to go to a hotel, and I wrote one of my best poems right there in that hotel, standing on my head. There's a curious state of comes over you, that's all. But some people like to think it starts with a phrase or something. I think it starts with a mood. As Poe said somewhere, you know, he wrote lots of prose, and he had a hard life and died at 40, the poor boy. But he said he never touched the poetry except when, you know, with something sacred touch. And that's a strong word for it, but that feeling that you never do it unless you never do it to pay a bill, because you probably won't. And yet it comes to market in the long run, you know, and you can't write it that way. If I ever thought when I was writing anything that this would settle, you know, pay the gas bill or something like that, I couldn't write it. But I do think in the middle of it, the only self-conscious thought I ever have is this seems to be going pretty good. See, good luck, another step, you know, still going. Just like taking on thin ice, you know, where you might go through and fail, but it's still going. Once I'm going, I go the same as it goes. I think it's like starting a sled at the top of the hill where they've worn the snow through too much, and it goes hard to start, but you get right over that gritty place, and a go she goes. You get right on and ride. One of the best ones I ever wrote. Isn't it? Yeah, it's good fun. I had a little bit of trouble with the last stanza to get that the way I wanted. But the first two are just slick as grease. That's one of the happy accidents, you can call it. You know, that's what you go into a poem for. See that alone and that own and that go and that low. Then I've kept glow and snow and overthrow and blow all the way through. It's quite a feat.
You don't make anything of the fact that retreat rhymes with defeat, then?
Oh, no. I value that on your... you can't really suspect me of just putting retreat there because of the rhyme. Can you?
Well, it's a hard question.
Yeah, well, that's the way it ought to be. We retreat. We don't escape. That's a word I loathe, you know, escape. But retreat is sort of characteristic word to me, that you retreat for strength, you know. Church touches that, you know. They don't brought up in the right religion if they don't know what retreat is. You don't escape. You withdraw with God, with sleep. I often see as transported to a spot, you know. I'm there in the woods at the edge. I was there with the axe and the tree and everything. And I made it just like that. And with the whole, trying to get the whole feel of the whole, you know, satisfying myself. I'd like to be there. I'm there. It's some years since I felled a tree, but it's a pleasure to me. You know, I've often said that every poem solves something for me in life. I go so far as to say that every poem is a momentary stay against the confusion of the world. But of course, any psychiatrist will tell you that so is making a basket or making a horseshoe or giving anything form gives you a confidence in the universe, that it has form. See, when you talk about your troubles and go to somebody about them, you're just fool. You ought to the best way to settle them is to make something that has form, because all you want to do is get a sense of form. All that makes you healthy and well is a feeling that there is some sort of form to your business, your occupation. Everybody that starts anything starts as the village idiot, of course. And maybe that's what all poets ought to be. You know, you see them wondering about that, how wild you have to go to be beyond the rational, you know, and the orderly. I often think of it, where the thought comes in, the force comes in, the wild force. My friendship lately in Washington has been very strange to me. It's blundered into, and I'm very much in the affairs of the Secretary of the in the Interior. That doesn't mean psychology. The real interior. And his beautiful obsession is almost the same as mine. Mr. Udall is round everywhere declaring wildernesses. It's he and Daniel Boone and Thoreau and me, all for the wilderness. Another poet had that wish, you know, oh, he says, oh, for a lodge in some vast wilderness. 18th century poet said, oh, for a lodge in some vast wilderness, some mighty contiguity of shade. He called that some 18th century stuff. A mighty contiguity of shade. That's fun, isn't it, that way? You know, we're taught that they're going to change change swords into plowshares, you know, and all that, to change weapons into tools. This one is called The Objection to Being Stepped On. This is a recent one, too. The Objection to Being Stepped On. At the end of the row, I stepped on the toe of an unemployed hoe. It rose in offense and struck me a blow in the seat of my sense. It wasn't a blow, an aim, and I must say it dealt me a blow that I felt like malice prepense. You may call me a fool, but was there a rule the weapon should be turned into a tool? But what do we see? The first tool I step on turned into a weapon. Then this full one, let's vary a little bit. This is an old one, too. Been around almost as much stopping by woods. It's called Provide, Provide, like that. Terrible. The witch that came, the withered hag, to wash the step with pail and rag, was once the beauty Abishag, the picture pride of Hollywood. Too many fall from great and good for you to doubt the likelihood. Die early and avoid the fate, or if predestined to die late, make up your mind to die in state. Make the whole stock exchange your own. If need be, occupy a throne where nobody can call you crone. This was long before Monaco. I wrote this line. Make the whole stock exchange your own. If need be, occupy a throne where nobody can call you crone. Some have relied on what they knew, others on being simply true. What worked for them might work for you. No memory of having starred makes up for later disregard or keeps the end from being hard. Better to go down dignified with boughten friendship at your side than none at all. Provide, provide. I've read that here before, and I've told what happened once in Washington. This was in the old times down Washington, and in front of me was a very important man, not quite the most important, but very important, and he was right down front. So I wound this up, I said, better to go down dignified with boughten friendship at your side than none at all. Provide, provide, or somebody else will provide for you. And I saw his wife was beside him, and she smiled. He didn't. He looked pretty grave. And then to make it even worse, I went on. You see, I love to say that tone, to say, or somebody else will provide for you. And then, and how will you like that? That's why I am what I am. You know. Then you like to be in. Now that's a terrible great poem. That's one of my most political of all my poems. I was born a Democrat, and I stayed a Democrat, but oh my, I've been pretty uneasy since 1896. I said to the president, I said, I admire you so much that I wish I was a better Democrat than I am. I'm a Democrat, but there's something the matter. A lady said to me, you've been saying all sorts of things tonight. Which are you, conservative or radical? And I said, I never dared. This is my one free verse poem that's been kept going. I put it in my book. I liked it so well. See, I reached one of those points I speak of in Who Think. I said, I never dared be radical when young, for fear it would make me conservative when old. And she went, you know, kind of confused. She didn't know where that left. I left her hanging up. That was out in California. I left her hanging there. She's hanging there still. I'm not a reformed Democrat or a reformed Republican or a reformed communist or anything. I'm just as I always was. There's some of the new critics have found that I'm a terror. The things I've been all reading are terrific, terrible. All right. Listen to this. I was saying as I came over, I'd tell a funny case of it. This little poem of mine, an old one, goes like this. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had ruled. See now, just look at that, fair and square. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had. And someone says to me, very sinister poem. And I said, sinister? No, he said, yes, the crow is a black bird. The crow appears all sorts of ways, but all right. I don't argue. And then he said, and I said, what more? He said, the hemlock tree. And I said, here, hemlock tree. And he said, what's Socrates? Socrates, you know, death of Socrates. And, you know, you get surprises in this world. I never thought so. I live with hemlock trees, and it's not the weed that Socrates drank at all, you know. And it's all around us, the tree. I'm partly just putting as much city as I am country, but I am a little more country than city. And I know what a hemlock tree is.
It takes all sorts of in and outdoor schooling to get adapted to my kind of fooling.
Sometimes I feel very brazen. Then sometimes I'm scared. I don't know why. I think it's because of some lack of some sustaining positiveness that I want to do something to people. If I don't have that, I wish to do something to them, scared. I always felt that with the class, too. Not tell them something, but do something to them. Do something to them. Then I was good. One of my favorite ways was to scare them about what it was to have what I really called an idea, to say what Ring Lardner calls a bucketful. Say something that is something, you know. They write these perfunctory papers that don't have anything in them, not one crack to the carload. Some people seem to think that if they pile up enough knowledge, it's like piling up oily rags in the basement, that they'll burst into flame of themselves, light the world up. They say to you in school, you know, hey, here we're going to dump a lot of material on you now, we back up this load to you, and then they say, now it's coming, assimilate it, and you die under it. The accumulators. Forgive, O Lord, my little jokes on thee, and I'll forgive thy great big one on me. What's God's great big joke on me? I'd rather not say. And the biggest joke of all is that I'm not saying. Sometimes I think I'm just a joke. But slowly not caring too much about that either. The gamble of life takes bravery, doesn't it? They tell about one soldier beside another charging up Mary's Height at Fredericksburg. He said to him,
said, "You're scared." And the other fellow said, "Yes, if you were as scared as I am, you'd run away." But you got to be brave and you got to be bold. Be brave enough to take your chance on your own discriminations. What's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. I suppose the most terrifying thing of all would be unjustly shot against the wall. Whether your legs would fail you and all that, you wonder, what your courage is. No, you wonder about everything, always wondering. See, the fear of God is just that. The Old Testament says more than once, I think, "May my gift, my sacrifice be acceptable in thy sight." Saying, fear, you've got to have that fear of some ultimate judgment beyond the crowd and beyond me. And that when you die in battle, that's what you have to say, "May my life be acceptable in thy sight. May my sacrifice be acceptable in thy sight." That's what you mean by the fear of God. However you work at it. No matter what you do, your work, your poetry, your life that you bet on, succeed or fail, may it be an acceptable sacrifice on that altar.
Now, I guess I've about taken your time. I'm warned against wearing you out. Yeah, say good night to you. If you stay standing, I'll say one little more poem to you, shall I? For the last one. Let's make it sweet and sad. You don't want to misunderstand me, but let me see how this goes. This one I wrote young. The heart is still aching to seek, but the feet question whither. Now this is for the farewell. Ah, when to the heart of man was it ever less than a treason to go with the drift of things, to yield with the grace to reason, and bow and accept the end of a love or a season. And so we had another kind of time from just digging potatoes. And say good night to you. Good night.